But we have in New Zealand an industry that promotes, produces and sells alcohol, and we have another industry largely funded by you, which suggests we shouldn't have the other industry. They are two sides of an argument that has been going on for a while now, and I thought this morning I would bring them together. The reason being that the Health Minister, Andrew Little, has indicated that there is going to be some sort of review of all our alcohol regulations. And of course, alcohol, highly taxed and highly regulated, as in who you can sell it to. There's an age restriction, where you can sell it, what hours you can sell it, how you can advertise it, who you can advertise it to, and what times you can advertise it, what days you can sell it, where you can put it in a supermarket, who's allowed to sell it, who's allowed to buy it. Do we need more regulation, and what is happening with what we would call drinking, if you like, drinking culture in New Zealand? I am joined now by two people at the forefront of this debate. One is Dr. Nicki Jackson, and Dr. Nicki Jackson is part of Health, now let me get this right, Alcohol Health Watch New Zealand, which is a group of academics and experts, I use the word advisedly, who do research on alcohol and its harmful effects. And the other person is Robert Brewer, who is CEO of Spirits New Zealand, which obviously represents people who make and sell alcohol. So we've got Alcohol Health Watch Executive Director Nicki Jackson. Nicki, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
And we've got Robert Brewer from Spirits New Zealand. Robert, welcome to you.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Nicki.
All right.
Good morning.
How we're going to kick this off is that the Minister is suggesting some review of regulations. Nicki Jackson, do you think anything needs to change, or what do you want to see changed in regulations around alcohol?
Well, absolutely. It's our most harmful drug, and I would suggest that our regulation is not fit for purpose given the harm to our communities. And communities were meant to have a greater say on alcohol regulation, and that just hasn't happened under these laws.
Okay, give me some specifics about what you want to see change.
So we want communities to be able to be heard in the local alcohol policy process rather than face lengthy, 7 years.
Now that's process, not outcome. What do you want to see changed?
We want to see the law get rid of the appeals process so that communities can have greater say. We want to see restrictions to alcohol advertising. We want to see the licensing criteria tightened up so communities can be, more successful fighting licences in their neighbourhood. And
what do you mean fighting licences? They might want licences.
If you read the media around the country, communities are up in arms, not wanting further bottle stores in their communities, but they've just been unsuccessful in these efforts. They're up against industry lawyers in these hearings, and you just look at the data, and so few licences have been declined around the country. Is it
your argument that alcohol and the problems it's caused are increasing in our communities?
They're certainly remaining stable, and the pandemic has certainly seen an increase in the number of New Zealanders increasing their drinking.
No. Just get me back to the question. Is the abuse, misuse, as you would typify it, of alcohol increasing? Is it getting worse in New Zealand or better?
The last 6 years show no change whatsoever in our high levels of hazardous drinking and harm.
No change. That's not getting worse. That's no change.
Well, and then if you look at the last couple of years of the pandemic, we've had 20%.
You can look at a lot of things the last couple of years of the pandemic, and I don't know that we can draw conclusions. Okay, that's a broad thing. You want people to be able to fight alcohol. You want communities to be able to fight licences. Okay, fine.
And not be exposed to all the marketing.
What market exposed? Okay.
Well, look, it's everywhere, yeah.
Is it? I'm looking around my studio. I cannot see any booze advertising. All right. Okay, that's your position. Robert Brewer, are you worried about a review of almost all alcohol regulations, which seems to be the general gist of what the Minister is saying? And would you agree with Nicki's characterisation that we're not making much progress on the issue of the problems caused by alcohol?
Well, where do I start? Nicki,
wherever you want.
Again. You've done it again, Nicki. You've just misquoted and misplaced what's actually happening in New Zealand around our drinking. We're drinking 25% less than we did in the 70s and 80s per capita. These are not, by the way, I'm going to start having some figures. I hope you don't mind. They're not industry figures, they're official figures, all right? So 25% less. than we did in the 70s and 80s. That's in spite of the number of licences going up from 3,000 to 11,000 and the amount of advertising and marketing spend going up. We're drinking less. We're drinking better too. I'm going to read for you now the latest health statistics. Fewer women are drinking, fewer men are drinking. Hazardous drinking amongst Māori, the latest health statistics have gone down. Older age groups who were drinking more problematically, that's my generation, that's now coming down. More younger people are drinking better and drinking less. This is not me, this is the Ministry of Health talking. And fewer underage people that's under the legal purchase age of 18 are drinking. So for Nicki to say that things haven't changed and remain steady is wrong. And I don't know why she keeps on saying these things when the actual official data says something else. Right, so I've got that off my chest. Let's talk about the Act. We're in complete support of a review of the Act. It just makes sense. It's 10 years old. We have a different environment, drinking environment now, where people are drinking better. Younger people are drinking less, as I've just said. We have a different socialisation or the beginning of how we view drinking. I think the Act needs to keep up with that. Shock horror, Nicki, I agree with you. The LAP and the district licensing provisions in the Act need an absolute look over. We absolutely believe that, in particular, the way that district licensing committees work and needs to be reviewed. They need to be better provisioned. They need to be supported better so that they can reflect their community's views on licensing in a much more open and dedicated way. Now, what do I mean by that? Some very simple things that you can do to make that happen. And this is just common sense. So what the Act doesn't do, or the regulations don't do at the moment, is give any guidance to those licensing committees about what a good or a bad operator, potential or otherwise, looks like. So why don't we just do that? Why don't we define in the regulations, as part of the review of the Act, why don't we define what a good and a bad operator looks like? Now, if you're sitting on a licensing committee now and you've got those guidelines in front of you and someone's standing there and say they're an existing operator, and one of the things says, one of the guidance aspects that I'm talking about says, if you have failed a CPO, a controlled purchase operation, that's when a purposefully created underage person goes into the premise and tries to purchase alcohol. If you've failed one of those, you don't get a license. You just don't get one. Just imagine if that was sitting in that as guidance in the regulations, how more straightforward it would be from a community perspective and a licensing perspective.
All right, Robert, I'm going to stop you there, and that's a good example. Nicki, I want to come back. Let's go back to the top of Robert's stanza. Do you disagree with the figures he was quoting?
Absolutely, and
well, which ones, and what counterfactual do you have to them?
Well, first and foremost, Sean, you said to me that we weren't looking at the last couple of years, the pandemic, but Robert goes right back to the height of the drinking in the 1970s to make a comparison. Okay, 1970s, but look at the last decade.
Well, hang on, Nicki. Do you disagree that young people are drinking, starting drinking later? That fewer women are drinking, that older people are drinking more responsibility, that all the trends seem to be going in the right way. Would you agree with that?
No, you use the word trend. He's looked at one-off changes in 1 year, and as an academic, we would never look at random fluctuations like that and report a trend. This is a one-off difference. If he'd have chosen last year's data, he would have shown increases. So, look, we don't do that.
Well, let's look over the last 10 years. Let's look over the last 10 years.
Okay, so we saw significant increases in hazardous drinking between 2012 and 2016, particularly amongst middle-aged and older adults.
So you picked those 4 years, okay, yeah.
Yep, and then if we look at the last 6 years in the surveys, then across the population groups, no statistically significant differences. When we're looking at overall, one-off fluctuations are not what we should be informing policy on. We should be looking at trends here.
And I've been asking trends, and you're both talking different trends. Robert Brewer, you come back. Do you disagree with that interpretation that you're not looking at trends?
No, actually, I did. I've been talking about the actual data that's just been published by the Ministry of Health. But look, listen, Nicki's right in the sense she picked that 4-year period where older drinkers did drink less responsibly. It's absolutely true. At the same time, however, younger people were drinking more responsibly. So, and again, Nicki is right that the trends are important. So, we sit here and Nicki will be saying, ban advertising, ban marketing, ban sponsorship, put the price up, reduce hours, reduce outlets, etc. And I'll be sitting here saying, actually, I have a different view that there are more effective and potentially more impactful ways of doing that. In the middle will sit the government, who's about to review the Act, and in the end they'll make a decision. Isn't it wonderful to live in a democracy?
Yeah, I just wonder if it shouldn't be people who are making the decision rather than government or you, Nicki, or you, Robert, to be honest. Maybe it's up to us because all you're trying to do is mess with our lives. And I think in some ways, Nicki, suggests that we do not have the common sense as individuals to make good decisions for ourselves about what we do with our lives and what drugs we consume and in what quantities.
Look, the evidence is clear that the environment has a huge impact on behaviour, not just in relation to alcohol. Of course, we're conditioned to respond to our environment, and that's something it's in our communities are, disproportionately harmed. There are more alcohol outlets in our poorest communities, more advertising, lower prices. We've seen changes with tobacco by addressing the environment. This is about equity. This is about reducing the harm. And Robert's wrong. The most cost-effective approaches to reducing consumption harm in this country are around price, availability and marketing. I want to see the trends come down. I want to see reduced harm in this country. I'm not about getting rid of the alcohol industry, but I am about having proper regulation.
Is it true that you and the Health Promotion Agency are working on a strategy called denormalisation of alcohol?
No. Last month there was a framework published called the Harm Minimisation Framework.
The what? Harmonisation?
Harm Minimisation Framework. Yep,
Yeah.
that's online.
Okay, and what's that?
That's a national framework for evidence-based action to reduce the harm from alcohol.
Okay, what other groups do you work with? Do you work with the Helen Clark Foundation on issues like this?
No, not closely. Health Coalition,
Or not
Aotearoa.
closely or not at all?
No, I haven't done any kind of direct work with them.
Direct work with them? Have you done any indirect work with them?
Well, I've had phone calls.
Okay.
but that's about it, yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to.
Yeah, Nicki, how much do you guys get funded a year?
So we get $616,000 a year.
Not a lot.
And that hasn't been adjusted by inflation.
Okay, but the Health Promotion Agency gets money direct from the alcohol industry, doesn't it?
From the levy on alcohol sold.
Yeah, how much does that get a year?
It's around $11.5 million.
11.
It varies.
Okay, so $12 million. Yeah, okay, and that's probably not in any way near the funds available to you, Robert, as an alcohol lobbyist, right?
No, absolutely not.
Well, no. What I'm saying, you're saying you've got less money than that.
Absolutely. My budget sits at just under what the health promotion that the Alcohol Health Watches is.
All right. You both want
$60 million spent
now. The
per year
interesting
on
thing
alcohol
is,
marketing.
yeah, what I've heard this morning is you both want a review of current regulations. You think it is time.
Definitely.
I suspect that you do not want the same changes out of this, though in some areas you do. What is the end game for you, Nicki Jackson? When do you do yourself out of a job? When have you achieved your mission and your life purpose? And when don't we need publicly paid wowsers like you?
Oh, look, I would welcome the day when every New Zealand drinker consumes within low-risk drinking guidelines. That would be a huge reduction in alcohol harm that would be seen and huge improvements to the well-being in this country.
Do you know, Nicki, that, I agree with you. We actually want the same thing. We just have different pathways that we feel is the way to get there.
And I want to get there sooner rather than later.
Me and my members would 100% agree with you. What we should be doing, Nicki, is sitting down and talking about this together, rather than doing what we do all the time, which Sean has just identified. We sit here and we lob rocks at each other across the same open ground.
No, it took 25
why don't we sit
years.
down and talk about it?
It took 25 years to get an alcohol and pregnancy warning label on a bottle because of industry lobbying. I'm not going to wait another 25 years to get these policies across the line.
Hang on. Nicki, whether it's genuine or
not, and talk about it.
Yeah, whether it's genuine or not, it sounds to me like Robert Brewer and the industry are holding out an olive branch here. Are you going to pick it up or not?
No.
Why not?
No, I won't. The same reason that we would never do this with the tobacco industry. Our bottom lines are different.
Well, I'd say the tobacco industry promoting a product that, if used as instructed, kills you. I'm not sure that alcohol, given its thousands of years of existence in societies all across the globe, is quite the same thing, Nicki.
Well, you just have to read industry submissions that go against the evidence which says price, availability and marketing matter. I read their submissions. I know what their stance is. We don't agree on the same position. We don't agree on...
You don't think your arguments, Nicki, are compelling enough if properly presented to actually change their attitude?
No, because profit is the bottom line.
Oh, so this is now a philosophical or a capital versus labour argument. This is now a political argument rather than a practical argument.
Look, I'm about reducing alcohol sales through proper regulation. I'm about reducing the harm in our communities.
Well, I'm about people living better lives.
And so much could be improved by reducing drinking. So much to be gained.
Yeah. Okay. Robert, are you disappointed that Nicki Jackson won't...
I'm not surprised, but the offer is genuine. And listen, I mean, I think one of the core differences is in what Nicki might be suggesting is the phrase she just used, which was, we want to reduce sales. Reducing sales doesn't necessarily reduce harmful drinking, and there's a big difference. A lot of what Nicki and the public health fraternity suggests in terms of price and availability, etc. Yes. Overall consumption might go down, but harmful consumption, and that's where we should be targeting, harmful consumption doesn't fall nearly as much. And so the 80% of us who drink socially responsibly tend to get impacted more than those who drink to harm. And those who have been putting in advertising controls and price controls around the world so far, and there are very few countries who have actually implemented the sort of things that Alcohol Health Watch has been talking about, they're finding this out.
Your response to that, Nicki?
The reason it's hard to get policies across the line is because intense litigation and delays by the alcohol industry. Look, the evidence is really clear that there's consistent evidence around price, availability and marketing. Look, almost half of all alcohol sales in this country alcohol sold in this country is consumed in very heavy drinking occasions. So there's a conflict of interest. We've got to get this out here, that the industry relies on harmful drinks to make its profits. It has to sustain that.
Is that true, Robert?
Nicki, no. Nicki, which countries in the world have successfully shown through implementation of price, marketing, etc. controls that harmful consumption have fallen by what is that has initially been predicted? Where?
Russia, Lithuania, you've got Norway, who has tight restrictions on alcohol advertising. We've got lots of evidence around reducing the affordability of alcohol. All those
countries you've mentioned, when they were bringing those changes and put forward massive changes in alcohol behaviour and alcohol harm, and it hasn't been evidenced. And you know that. Look at what's happened in Scotland when they've tried to bring a minimum unit price. They're now reviewing it because harmful drinking went up. When they tried to ban advertising and marketing in France, the same thing happened. They reintroduced it. Listen, we can throw stones at each other, Nicki, or we can sit down and talk about it.
To be honest, I can just look at the evidence and see the changes that have come about through minimum unit pricing, reduced purchasing amongst lower income.
But Dr. Jackson, you don't want to talk about it. You haven't got any middle ground, eh? It's your way or the highway.
Look, I do. If Robert says that he would advocate to increase the price of alcohol, reduce availability, restrict marketing, I would love to see.
I think what Robert said this morning is he's happy to sit down and talk with you about effective ways to reduce harmful alcohol consumption in New Zealand with an open book.
Well, I want to see this in their submissions. I want to see evidence that this is where they're coming from.
So they have to jump through your hoops before you sit down in a room with them?
Well, all I'm hearing is that a focus on individual responsibility and education, which is time and time again been shown to be ineffective.
Well, I don't know that it is. If we're not drinking like we were in the 70s and 80s, if young people are starting drinking later, if young people are binge drinking less, if overall alcohol consumption in this country is going down, which it is.
You cannot say that we don't have a problem with alcohol.
No, but what I can say, and what irrefutable proof, not from the industry, tells me, is that young people are starting drinking later. They are binge drinking less. Overall, New Zealanders are drinking less alcohol. Right? Do you disagree with that?
There have been slight reductions in per capita consumption, but I have huge problems with that measure.
I don't care if you've got huge problems. Let's talk about the facts. So let's keep working on those trends and let's get people drinking more responsibly. You're saying the only way to do that is put up unit prices and reduce advertising and reduce availability.
And availability. Let's create healthier environments that enable...
But you're not. You're just suppressing a desire without educating anyone, aren't you?
But the environment sends strong signals around the harms from alcohol, just like we did with tobacco. You know, you put up the price and you reduce advertising. You know, we've got kids nowadays that aren't starting
and then you give an alternative product like vaping, which seems to be, in my mind, just as bad almost.
Look, yeah, I mean, the evidence is really clear on what works here, so we're here to support the evidence. Okay.
Robert, are you still going to hold out the olive branch, or has it been thrown back in your face this morning?
Door is always open. Sean, wouldn't it be great if we could jointly go to government and say we've got an answer?
Wouldn't it, Nicki?
I don't think the answers would be the same.
Well, why not give it a crack?
No, thank you. I've got my bottom line.
You've got your bottom line. That is not a way to negotiate. I thank you both for your time this morning. Dr. Nicki Jackson from Alcohol Health Watch, which your money pays for, and Robert Brewer from Spirits New Zealand, who I guess what you spend when you go to the bar or buy some alcohol pays for as well. They were sitting here talking alcohol reform. I tried to find some common ground, but I'm not sure that there was any forthcoming. And if I was going to say who was more open to the idea of powwowing, probably Robert from the booze industry. Nicki seemed pretty set in her ways. Look, we got 4 minutes. If you got a call on what you made of that, we will put that up, obviously, on our website, and we'll have a replay of that. I thought it was a really interesting discussion. My point is, don't use price to coerce me. If you've got a decent argument, have the argument with me. And, you know, I don't think we drink the way we used to or as poorly as we drink to. I still think alcohol can be a problem. I think pee can be a problem. I think stupidity can be a problem. But I don't know. I don't like the state coercing me.